Exercise 1. Starting a new project. Begin by opening GameMaker Studio. At the Start screen, click on the New icon. On the next screen, you will click on the drag and drop icon. Throughout this course, we will exclusively be using the drag and drop projects. On the next screen, save the project in a folder on your USB drive or on your computer. Navigate to that folder and then give it the name Assignment 1 Exercises. At the next screen, this will be the primary workspace for your GameMaker games. On the right side of the screen is the Resources pane. Here is where you will work with all of the different items that your game will contain. Each of these is a folder that will contain the different resources. When GameMaker first creates a new project, one of these folders, the Rooms folders, already has a resource created for you. Click on the triangle to the left side of Rooms, and you'll see that this contains a room resource. You can also create subfolders within each of these folders to further subdivide your resources. To the left side of Resources is known as the Workspace pane, shown as a tab at the top of the workspace. This is where you'll be working with all of your resources throughout the game build. Exercise 2. Creating a sprite. Sprites will make up the visual environment of your game. Right-click on the Sprites folder. This will bring up a subfolder and choose Create. The sprite editing window will open in your workspace window. Before we begin, let's talk about how we can manipulate the items within the development environment to better utilize them. There's a problem here. The sprite window is partially covered by the resources window. You can manipulate these by changing the size of these different items. Take the mouse cursor and you'll notice that it is hovering over the edge of the resource pane. If you click on this and hold it, you can drag the resources window to the left or right, changing the size of it. You can also change the size of this by clicking on this double arrow to the right side. This will completely hide the resources window, and if you click it again, it'll resize it out. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to make it hidden so that we can see the sprite editing window fully. Once you create the sprite, the first thing you should do is give it a name. I'm going to give it the name SPR_block. Notice that I preceded the name with the three letters SPR and an underscore. These are used to help the game designer easily distinguish what type of a resource that they're looking at. It's best to do this in all cases. Next, we're going to set the size of the sprite. Below this, you'll see an area called Size. Click on the four arrows, and this will open another sub-window where you can change the size. Click on the width area where it has 64 and change this to 32. If you press the Tab key, you'll notice that the height changes to 32 automatically, and that's because the maintain aspect ratio area is checkmarked. Click the Apply button. Next, click on the Edit Image button. This will open a new tab next to the Workspace tab above. This is where you will edit your sprite. In here is a gray checkerboard area. This checkerboard area is where your sprite will be created. Over to the right, you'll see a series of tools to allow you to edit your sprite. These are very similar to the paint tool that comes with Windows. We're going to be creating a simple box as the first sprite. So first select a color from the colors area. I'll choose yellow. Then choose the paint bucket. This is a fill tool. And then come over into the gray checkerboard area and click on the screen. This will fill the entire area with your chosen color. Click on the X button next to Sprite Block on the tab, and this will close the editing window and then open back to your sprite resource. You go ahead and click on the X to close the sprite. I'm going to then reopen the resources window so I can look at it, and you'll notice that a new sprite resource called Sprite Block has been created. Exercise 3, creating an object. Objects are used in GameMaker to represent the game pieces that you will be using during the game. Each can have unique rules that you can define for how it will react with other objects and the environment. Create an object by right-clicking on Objects and choosing Create Object. This will bring up our first object in the workspace area. Start by giving it the name Object Block. OBJ_block. Next, you'll give it a sprite. Click on the triple dot to the right of the word that says No Sprite, and then choose Sprite Block from the list. You'll leave all other options alone for this time. That's it. Your object has been created. Exercise 4, adding events. An event is something that causes an action to happen. Events are triggered when the player touches a key on the keyboard, moves the mouse, touches the screen, etc. They can also happen when a certain amount of time has passed, like an alarm clock going off. They can also happen when different objects on the screen interact with one another. There are many other events that can be used within GameMaker. You can add an event to an object by clicking on the Add Event button at the bottom of the Events pane. If I click on here, there's a series of events that will appear. The Create event happens as soon as the object is created within the room. A Step event happens during each frame of the game. Alarm events, these are the ones that will happen periodically. And Key events, these happen when a key button or key is pressed on the keyboard. We add an event by choosing it from the event list. We'll start off by choosing the Create event. So the Create event has been created. I'm going to close the resources pane so we can see this. And you'll notice that we have an area here to work within. This area is very similar to the workspace area. You'll be creating actions within this area. Exercise 5, scrolling within the workspace. Windows inside this workspace can be hidden due to them scrolling off the side of the screen. You'll notice that the Create window here is partially off to the right side of the screen. You can manipulate the workspace by scrolling around inside of it. If I scroll using the mouse button in the middle, the scroll wheel, up and down within this window, it will scroll this up and down. To begin this, make sure that you have clicked in a blank area of the workspace so that your view is centered in the workspace. So scrolling up and down causes this area to scroll up and down. You can scroll right and left by holding the Shift key down and scrolling. This will move things left and right on the screen. I can also zoom in and out by holding the Control key down and then scrolling the mouse wheel. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set this up by allowing us to fully see the Create window for the actions. Exercise 6, Adding Actions. Actions within GameMaker are a way to make the objects do something within the game. Some of these examples are moving the object on the screen, displaying a score on the screen, or creating a missile. Within this window, the Create window, there are a series of tools that you can use which are on the right side of the screen. These represent actions that you will be adding to your object. The first action we're going to add is called a movement action. This is the toolbox, and you can scroll through this by holding the little scroll bar down and moving down throughout the tools. Each tool is within a group. These are called the common items, instance items, etc. And we're going to move down until we find the movement area, which is here. If you hover over these, they'll give you a pop-up giving you an idea of what these particular actions can do. This one with the double arrows pointing up and left is the movement action we want to use. It's called the Set Direction Fixed. You click and hold this down, and then you're going to drag it out and place it into this area. So once I let go, it will place this into our Create Event system, which will then allow us to manipulate the actions. Now that we've dragged this action out, we can set the properties of this action. Click on the right arrow of the Set Direction Fixed action. This is telling GameMaker that when the object is created, that you will set the direction of the object pointing to the right. Also notice that over on the left side here is a little shortened version of what you see over here. This has its stating set a fixed direction. If I drag this open, you can see that I can make this larger and smaller. Sometimes these are too long to fit on the screen, so you can pull this across to see it. This is used to give you a shortcut idea of what's happening over here. Because as more and more actions are added here, they will scroll off the screen, and you would have to scroll through here to view them. Where here, you can view them a little easier. Okay, we're going to add another action. We're going to add a speed action to this. We'll do this a little differently than scrolling through the list because this can become cumbersome. Instead, type in the search bar up here the word speed. This will bring us up a list of potential options of actions for us. In this case, we want the one called Set Speed under the Movement group. Select and drag this out. Now when I drag this out, notice that a little purple bar appears under Set Direction Fixed action. If I let go of my mouse now, it will put the Set Speed action under the Set Direction Fixed action. This indicates that we first want this action to happen, and next we want this action to happen. Also notice that there's a line connecting these two. That also can give you a feel of what has to happen and in the order that they happen. In the Set Direction Fixed action, in the Speed area, select or type in the value 5. This will indicate that the object will be given a speed of 5 pixels per second. Exercise 7, Working with a Room. Open your Resources pane, and in here, make sure that you have the Rooms folder open. Inside of here, as we stated earlier, is Room 0. You can create other rooms by choosing Create Room, but we don't need this for this particular exercise. Instead, you're going to be opening room 0. So double-click on room 0, and you'll notice that a new tab has appeared on the workspace and an additional pane has opened on the left side. This is the room editor area. The room can have a lot of different properties associated with it. Thus, it opens in a slightly different way. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to minimize the resources window to get it out of the way. We'll be adding some objects next to the game room, but first you have to make sure that the correct layer is set. Over on the left side of the screen is an area called Layers. Underneath this is an area called Instances and Backgrounds. Make sure that the Instances layer is highlighted. Next, reopen the Resources window, and in here you will hold on to the object block, drag it out into the window, and just set it somewhere in the middle and let go. Okay, the room is set up, so you can close the room by clicking on the X next to the Room tab. This will bring us back here. Now, the game is complete. I know it's not much of a game, but we have to start somewhere. So now you're going to run the game to see it in action. Up on the toolbar, you'll see a little triangle pointing to the right. This is the Run button. As you'll notice, if you hover over it, it gives you a tool tip. Once you click on the Run button, at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see a series of sentences appear crossed here. This is indicating that the game is being built for you. Once this is completed, a window is going to pop up on the screen and your game will begin running. Now what's going to happen in this particular case is the block will be created and then just start moving to the right side of the screen. So let's go ahead and click play. Screen opens, the block moves to the right. That's all we told it to do. Go ahead and click the X in the upper area of this window to close the game. Exercise 8, saving and backing up your project. As you've probably learned in the past, you don't want to lose work that you're working on. Now, GameMaker saves this periodically by default, but you need to make sure that you have backup copies available if possible. To make a backup copy, click on File, click Save Project As, and then you can give this a new name and save it. Now, if you do this, your current project will change to this new name, so you need to understand that. So you either want to continue working in the new project that you've created, or close this and reopen the original project. That is up to you. Exercise 9, controlling an object. Well, so now you have an object in your room, but it doesn't really do much. We need to add the ability to control this instead of just letting it do what it wants to do. So for this particular exercise, you won't need the create event again. So let's go ahead and delete it. I'm going to scroll within this window to bring things back to where I can see them a little better. And I'm going to click on the create event, right-click on it, and click delete. That deletes the event for us so we can add the correct event. In this case, I'm going to add a keyboard event. In this case, a key down. Then there's a sub-menu that pops up, and then I'll choose the down. So this is the down arrow key on the keyboard. Over here, I'm going to add two actions. These will be the same actions that we had for the create event. So I will go ahead and add a movement fixed. Now you'll notice that these moved up into this area called recently used. So I'm just going to grab the set direction fixed. Because this is the down arrow, I'll choose the down key. I'll choose the down arrow here. I'll then pull the set speed out and give this the value of 5. I'm going to have you go ahead and add 3 more keys for each of the arrows. So let's go ahead and I will do that. Once you've created all of the events, in this case 4 of them, go ahead and run the game. And you should notice you'll be able to control the movement of the block on the screen by pressing the arrow keys. Close the window when you're done. Exercise 10. Asking questions and making decisions. As you saw in the previous exercise, making an object move is quite simple. Something was missing. How do you make the object stop moving? There are several ways to accomplish this in GameMaker, and all of them require GameMaker to ask a question, and depending on the answer, perform some actions. There are 2 different ways to ask a question in GameMaker. One is using an event, and another is using an action. Events are really nothing more than questions that a game asks every game frame. For example, in this game, the game asks, is the right key pressed each frame? We want to make the game stop moving the block, so an easy method to do this is by checking to see if no key is pressed. We can use an event to do this, so click on the Add Event, Key Down, No Key Event. Inside of this, add a Set Speed option or action and set the speed to 0. This will tell us if no key is pressed to set the speed of the block to 0. I'll go ahead and run this now to show you that if I set the block in motion and I let the key down, it will stop moving rather than continue to move as it did previously. Close the window. Now the other way to ask a question is to use an action. This is a little bit different. So we're going to go ahead and delete the key down, no key event. We're going to add a new event in here, and this is known as the step event. So click on Add Event, Step, and then from the submenu choose Step again. The step event is an event that happens every game step. It does not require any user interaction, so this is something that the game does by itself. In here, we want to do the same thing as we did before. We want to check if no key is pressed. There is an action for this, and this is called an if key down action. So in your search bar of your toolbox, type if key, and you'll see that we've got a few list items here. We'll look for the one called if key down. It's this one. I'm going to drag this and place it into our workspace here. We're going to be choosing from this down arrow here the appropriate key. In this case, the no key. This will add this no key option up here. Now we need to set the set speed action within this window. You'll be adding the set speed action in just a moment, but before we continue, I want you to notice that to the right side of this particular action is the word empty. The reason for this is this being a question, there are 2 potential options. The question, if asked, can be true, or the question can be false. In this case, if the question is true, that no key is being pressed, we want to do something on the true side. This happens to be where the empty comes into play. Go ahead and find the set speed action and drag it into the workspace area. Now I want you to notice that the purple line is now appearing on the right side of this. You can drag it downward and it'll show below. What we want to do is place it on the right side here, because what we want to happen is that if no key is pressed, then set the speed. So if key down is no key is true, then set the speed. So I'm going to delete this and I'm going to do this one more time, dragging the set speed out, placing it on the right side. I also want you to notice something over here in the pane to the left. You'll notice that this option is indented all the way to the left. The set speed is indented slightly to the right. This is indicating that this is a question, and then this is an action that is accomplished if the question is true. I'm going to run the game one more time, and they should operate in exactly the same way as it did before. Press the key, let go, press the key, let go. So you'll see that we previously used an event to ask a question, and this time we used an action to ask a question. You'll be needing to use both of these capabilities throughout the course.